By Uncle Sam. What about this? Margie Omero, Democratic pollster, president of Momentum Analysis, LLC. How you doing, Margie? Good morning.
Good morning.
Brad Blakeman's a former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Brad, what's up, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Virginia wins?
Virginia wins big, and Ken Cuccinelli has got a good track record going against the federal government, especially on Obamacare. And look, when the state has to defend against the federal government, constantly infringing on states' rights, these are the kinds of wasted opportunities, not only in time, effort, and money for states that can never be recouped, but it's also a rebuke of the Obama administration's policy, and that is continue to press the envelope on states' rights versus federal rights. You've seen it on immigration, you've seen it on Obamacare, you've seen it on guns, and the bottom line is this, Bill. If you don't like it, sue me. That's the Obama credo. And guess what? We do.
Yeah. Listen, just keep it on the EPA for a moment, Margie, then we'll address everything Brad just ticked off. Did the EPA overstep here?
I think it's important. Look, the EPA wanted to make sure that the local watershed is clean, and it's something that polls show is the #1 environmental concern. 80% of Americans, according to Gallup, are concerned about clean water, clean local rivers and creeks, and clean air and water. So this is a real concern that a lot of Americans have. And so the EPA was looking for a way to keep the local watershed clean, and by reducing the runoff, that was a way to do that. Just like they're already able to regulate sediment and so on.
To both of you, you know what won this thing? It wasn't just the Republican Attorney General. It was the Democratic-controlled Fairfax County Board of Supervisors who joined his case and said, you can't do this.
Well, I can understand why local county officials would say, you know, we're going to struggle with figuring out how to implement this rule and comply with it. I think it's important to look at Ken Cuccinelli's language, which was very different from what the local county officials were using. And that language may be fine in a primary, but if he wants to be governor of Virginia, he's going to have to use the language of regular voters. And regular voters are concerned about clean air and clean water and their local watershed.
We'll leave that argument about the governorship in Virginia for another day. But Brad, to the larger point here, this is what happens when political leaders of both sides get together. They can both declare victory.
I live in Fairfax County. I don't want the federal government coming in and telling local officials rainwater runoff, especially rainwater that's not on federal property. This isn't affecting federal property. This is affecting local residents. It's their issue as to what should be done with the runoff of rainwater on their state and local lands. So I'm all with the Democratic leadership of Fairfax County, as I'm with the Republican Attorney General, coming together to tell the federal government to lay off. States' rights are paramount. What the Constitution doesn't give to the federal government, the states have the right, and what the federal government is doing now is grabbing.
Just to be clear on this, if you wanted to eliminate the runoff, you would have had to confiscate homes, right?
Exactly.
And change that property and plant grass or trees to prevent it.
Eminent domain would have kicked in, and then who was going to reimburse those landowners for land that was taken by the government?
Okay, and that was the argument Cuccinelli made. Now, Margie, what about Brad's larger points there? About the list of challenges that someone like Cuccinelli has taken on, and in part, he's won.
Well, you know, it's made him a favorite in some quarters. It's not the language of swing voters. It's not the language that I hear when I do focus groups around the country. I don't hear people use the language that Cuccinelli uses when he says the EPA wants to invade Mexico, or the EPA is going to evict people from their homes, which doesn't happen, and it's not something that people worry about. But when they do worry about making sure that they have clean air and clean water for their children and their families, safe food, good schools, these are the things people worry about, not political grandstanding, and not you know, taking on colorful political positions simply to grab headlines. And I think it's important to really listen to the voters and how regular voters talk, and I don't hear that language in what
I would
Ken
imagine
Cuccinelli's
if
language.
you were a voter living in one of those houses, you would declare victory here, and you would support this.
Well, look, as I said, I think locally, I can understand why local officials and residents say, let's think about what we can do here. I think ultimately, though, the question is of intent and purpose. And the EPA's purpose is to make sure we have clean air and clean water, and that's a shared value. And that's not the language that Cuccinelli's been using.
Reducing the water quality impacts of stormwater. Have a great day, everybody, okay? And I hope it doesn't rain on your weekend. Margie, thank you. Brad, thanks to you as well.
You too.
Hemmer@foxnews.com is the email, also on Twitter